Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Night Shadow by Alice Bienia, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. I stepped deeper into the alley. The late afternoon sun disappeared behind a curtain of clouds, casting the passageway into semi-darkness. The crunch of gravel under my feet echoed in my ears and sent a shiver up my spine. This wasn't my first investigation, but the stakes had never felt so personal. 2 months ago, I shuttered my private investigative practice, Night Investigations, to join CanNet Investigative Agency. 2 months isn't exactly a long time, just long enough for my initial fears that I was making a mistake to start to solidify. At 43, I found small comfort in the thought that I could rehang my private eye shingle and start over if things didn't work out. So, when my boss, William Carlton Smith, asked me to look into his friend's disappearance, I jumped at the chance to prove to him and myself that he hadn't made a mistake in hiring me. My heart raced as I peered into the dim light. The alley was choked with discarded bottles, used needles. Torn flyers fluttered like fallen leaves in the brisk October wind. Shadows clung to the decaying walls of the graffiti-covered buildings, obscuring what lay ahead. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the anxiety coiling in my stomach, and pushed on. I pulled out my cell phone and turned on the built-in flashlight. "Come on, Martin," I muttered. "Are you down here?" Martin Jackson had been living on the fringes of society since returning from service, haunted by the ravages of a war where there were no winners. A fire in the rooming house where Martin was living had alerted my boss to his sudden disappearance. When William asked me to find his old army buddy, my initial thoughts were that whatever had happened to Martin was tied to his ongoing struggles. But William didn't seem to think so. His tense plea echoed in my mind. "He's in trouble, Jorja. I need you to find him." So instead of chasing the perpetrators of some high-tech crime, here I was, following the shadows of a man who, in all likelihood, didn't want to be found. I had been told some of the people displaced by the rooming house fire had set up an encampment of sorts in one of the nearby alleyways. I moved further down the lane, the light beam cutting a narrow path through the gloom. My flashlight beam paused on a pile of trash lying next to a garbage bin. The putrid stench of rotting food filled my nostrils. A knot twisted in my stomach. The weight of my responsibility to carry out my promise to William pushed me past an instinctual urge to turn back. The fading light was all but gone now. The graffiti-covered walls closed in around me. My eyes landed on a bundle of rags near the far end, partially concealed by a black dumpster. My heart thundered as I stepped closer. A figure lay, slumped against the wall. Fear clawed at my throat as I closed the gap between us, my feet crunching on the broken glass and debris. "Please be okay," I urged, more to myself than to anyone. "Martin?" There was no response. I crouched next to the body. The face I had memorized, seen smiling in an old army photo on William's desk, appeared pale and haunted against the dark wall behind him. His vacant eyes stared ahead unseeingly. His mouth was open, his lips blue and twisted in pain. "Martin?" My hand trembled as I reached out to check for a pulse. There was none. I pulled back and my heart dropped as reality sank in. Martin had fought his last fight. My eyes swept over his lifeless body. A patch of vomit stained his jacket. There were no signs of blood or visible trauma. What happened here? My mind raced with possibilities. Had someone killed him? Or was his death due to self-inflicted pain? I knew better than to turn him over or further compromise the scene. I needed to call William and the police. I fumbled for my phone and my hands froze at a noise behind me, a soft scuff of shoes against gravel. I jumped to my feet and spun around. "Who's there?" My voice was steady despite the fear pounding through my veins. My ears crackled in the silence. I punched William's cell number into my phone and waited as it rang. The heavy air, thick with the stench of decay and years of neglect, clung to my skin and pressed against my chest like an unseen weight. "Come on, pick up," I whispered, glancing over my shoulder. Just as I was about to hang up and call 911, William's voice came through, rough with urgency. "Jorja, what's up? Are you okay?" My breath caught as I tried to find the right words. I'm so sorry, William. It's Martin. He's He's dead. I found him in an alley. William inhaled sharply. You sure it's him? Yes, sorry. I'm not sure what happened. A heavy silence fell on the line. I called you first. I knew you'd want to know right away. I'm sorry it's not the news you were looking for. I guess I should call the police. Yeah, no. Thanks for letting me know. Are you okay? A bit shook, but otherwise fine. Where are you? I gave him directions to my location and then called the police. Now I stood in the oppressive silence of the alley with Martin. Part of me wanted to leave, make my way back out onto the street where it would be safer, but another part of me felt obligated to stay with him. Suddenly, the rustling returned, more pronounced this time. I whipped around, my flashlight aimed at the sound. A figure lurked in the shadows, just out of the beam's reach. Stay where you are. The police are on their way. Bile rose into my throat, making it hard to breathe. Who are you? I demanded, clutching the phone so tightly that my fingers ached. Easy there, lady. The voice was low, gravelly. Just a passerby. I don't want any trouble. My heart continued to pound. I shifted my stance to face him square on. My need for answers gave me strength. Who are you? What happened here? Like I said, I'm just passerby. But trust me, you don't want to get mixed up in this mess. Just a friendly piece of advice. Get out while you can. My pulse quickened. Could he have something to do with Martin's death? Why? Do you know this man? I tilted my head back at Martin. The figure sank further back into the shadows. I don't want trouble. What happened here? My voice sounded loud in the silence. My leg muscles tightened. I fought the urge to run. Shifting his weight, he turned his head toward the entrance of the alley as if he expected someone else to arrive. Let's just say this alley is a bad place to be right now. What did you see? The faint sound of sirens reached my ears. Relief washed over me. Help was on the way. The figure stepped out of the shadows but kept his head down. He turned and walked away without glancing back. I watched until his shape melted into the darkness. He looked like he belonged in this part of the city. Hardened, streetwise, but something about him felt off. Had he been standing there watching me this whole time? I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he was letting on. I waited, forcing my mind to focus as the sirens grew louder. I needed to keep it together for a little while longer. Flashing blue and red lights entered the far end of the alley. William was probably not far behind. I took a shaky breath and glanced over at Martin's body. He had been a man lost to the world, struggling to find his footing after the horrors of the war. Now he lay here, cold and alone. William would want answers, and one question I desperately needed resolved. Why had the man in the shadows warned me not to get involved?